get really bad allergies. So if I look weird during this video, that's why. It's really funny how I do bonsai, but the specific pollen that I'm allergic to is specifically tree pollen. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Notion Bonsai, and in this video today I'm going to be teaching you how to deal with extremely pot-bound bonsai. Alright, so welcome. So these are the three trees that we're going to be working on in this video today, and they're all actually the same species. These are Lonicera nitida, also known as the hedging honeysuckle. I really love this species of tree for bonsai. They've got these little beautiful delicate green leaves, really interesting flaky bark texture, and not only that, they grow extremely fast. You can develop one of these into a bonsai in as little as like 2 or 3 years. But of course, the downside of these things growing super fast is they need repotted a lot. I would go as far as saying that repotting these every year is a good idea, especially if they're small trees like this in smaller pots, because they just fill the pots really quickly. Even this little Mame sized one in like 2 years. So I know these are probably going to be really pot bound. And if you're new to bonsai, you may be thinking to yourself, what is a pot bound tree? What does pot bound even mean? This is what I thought when I was first getting started in bonsai. I heard this term pot bound or root bound. I heard people saying this and I didn't quite know what it meant. And it's just basically the term we give to when the roots of a tree completely fill the pot like this to the point where it's sort of holding itself together. It goes beyond being pot bound and it becomes extremely congested to the point where water can no longer penetrate down through the soil and reach all of the roots. And then in this case, the tree just suffocates in the pot because it can't get any water, or any water that it does get gets trapped in there and then stays there too long, and as a result the roots stay too wet for too long, and then they can actually begin to rot and cause all these fungal problems. And this goes back to why we would just even repot a bonsai in the first place, and it's really because we don't want it to get to this stage. You don't want the tree to be pot bound. A simple way to check if your tree is becoming pot bound is just lift it out, have a look at the roots. How dense are they? You know, press on them and see. And I would say, looking at this little Lonicera, this is definitely becoming pot bound and it needs to be dealt with as soon as possible, or the health of the tree could suffer. And now before we begin, the tools that we'll be using throughout this video today are some root pruning shears, bonsai tweezers, root cutters, a bent fork or a bonsai root rake, wire cutters, a chopstick, and some gin pliers. And as always, by no means do you absolutely have to have all of these specialized bonsai tools. If you're new to bonsai and you want to just get started, you can get by with just a cheap pair of garden scissors or some secateurs, whatever you have at your disposal to get a particular job done. However, you do want to make sure that whatever scissors that you are using are clean and sharp. Clean so we don't introduce any bacterial or fungal infections to our trees, and sharp because a sharp blade on a pair of scissors will give you a much cleaner cut on the branches. And in horticulture, clean cuts heal so much faster and more efficiently than a blunt cut that was sort of squashed by a dull blade. Generally speaking, the absolute best time of the year to repot the majority of your bonsai is early spring. However, there are some exceptions to this rule. For example, you've got an extremely pot-bound tree and there's a risk that the health of this tree is really going to suffer, or you have a tree that's in like a really bad composty soil and it might as well be pot bound because it's just staying too wet for too long, and it's midsummer and you notice the tree suffering. What do? In this case, I would say it's okay to repot at this time of year if the alternative is the tree's going to die. Sort of think of it like, if the tree's going to die anyway because it's in poor conditions, why not try repotting it into something that's going to help it thrive? And you might actually get lucky and the tree will do well. With Lonicera, I know these can be repotted like from early spring the whole way through to like midsummer. They're just so vigorous and so hardy and they bounce back really well. And this tree is actually in a little bowl that I got from like a second-hand store. I just thought this bowl looked pretty interesting. I took a ceramic drill bit and just drilled a hole in the bottom, and since then it's been working pretty well. Now when it comes to repotting a pot-bound tree like this, you may have seen something online called slip potting. I have seen this a few times in videos where they recommend how to repot a houseplant, where they take a tree out of the pot, get rid of the old pot, then take a larger pot, fill it with soil, take the tree and just sit it in and allow it to grow from there. This is just my opinion. and you can disagree if you like, but I absolutely do not like slip potting trees because the tree's pot bound here, and then when you put it into a pot and it grows more roots out from the pot bound ball, it just gets worse. I feel like it just stays pot bound and compact in the inner area, the inner core of the root ball, and then you get these finer roots outside. So what can happen is it can sort of rot the inside, but I've seen many problems happen from this style of potting. Maybe for house plants, this could work well for something like a monstera, but for bonsai, I absolutely do not like this. If you are going to slip pot a bonsai in this style, at the very least, I recommend, getting a bent fork, loosening up the roots as much as you can, make the whole root ball nice and aerated and light. Don't cut any roots, and then slip pot it as you would if you were to up pot a tree. And I'm gently going to rake outward from the center of the trunk here. And as you can see, this root ball is really, really compact. We've got a lot to deal with here today. I'm gonna try and loosen this up as much as I can. And when it gets to this point, it really is not good even for the design of the root spread that we're trying to create. Because instead of making design choices on the roots, we just have to first get the roots in a healthy condition. And then the years after, we can then come back and make better choices for the roots design. If you feel that a metal tool is just being too harsh around these roots, you can come in with a chopstick, be a little bit more gentle with a bamboo or a piece of wood. And whenever I drag the roots, I'm always working outward from the trunk. Never do I want to cross and tear roots around in a circle. And I am working with these little jabbing motions, just holding the chopstick nice and gently. That way if it snags on a root, it's going to slide in my hand rather than tearing through everything. I'm just going to gently go around like this. And because this is in bonsai soil, it is making this a little bit easier for me because bonsai soil mixes are nice and aerated. If this had been in something like pure compost, this would have been so much more difficult. And if you are working on a root ball like this, it is a good idea just to let it dry out a little bit before you work on it. That way you aren't working with a mushy environment. But if I take this chopstick and stab, see how compact that is? It's absolutely not moving. So we have to just gently work at this little by little, the whole way around. And as you can see, we are getting there. It's getting a little bit looser. Just loosening the top part, and oh my goodness, sometimes you'll find little air pockets and pieces of low resistance with the chopstick like this. These are the parts you really want to come in and work on because they will loosen up pretty nicely. Now I'm going to take the tree and sit it on its side, and this is really where it has reached the edge of the pot. I'm just going to pry this out like this with the chopstick. This tree actually isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be after 2 years. I would even argue that this isn't really that pot bound. I have seen trees and worked on trees that are much worse than this, but the same techniques do apply when approaching a pot bound tree. Now that I've loosened the edges of this, I'm going to take the tree, carefully hold it upside down, and then work on the underside, again working from the center outward. Now, if you're working on a particularly warm or windy day, it is a great idea to keep a spray bottle of water nearby just to mist the roots as you work on the tree. And although we want to keep this root ball dry, we don't want the roots to completely dry out, as if any of these roots on this root ball do dry out, they're essentially dead. So you always just want to keep them lightly hydrated. As I'm working in this, I'm actually finding a piece of wire that I forgot about whenever I wired this tree into the pot. And if I look in the bottom here, I can actually see there's actually still the potting mesh and the wire. It must have been pulled up through the hole, and that's why I didn't see it anymore. So I'm just going to take the wire cutters and cut it from the base here. Then I can just take out the mesh. And then from the top, maybe I can just gently loosen the soil here. Ah, I see, there it is. So now I can just untwist the wire, and I should be able to just pull it out like this. And now just taking the tree, I'm going to submerge the roots in this fresh water and give them a good wash. This just helps remove any extra soil that's going to be still in the roots. It makes it a lot easier to work on. And as I look at this tree, I can actually see there's a bunch of algae growing off the trunk. So I'm just going to take a toothbrush, submerge the tree, make it nice and wet, and then this will just help us get the algae off. Now it is time to come in and do some root work, and as you can see, some of these roots are actually still circling around. They just naturally want to circle like this, no matter how much I try and force it to be like that. So at this point, when a root's committed to circling, I just like to cut it off at the point where it starts to circle, just like that. Whenever these circling roots grow and thicken over time, they can actually begin to strangle the tree whenever they get really thick. These are known as girdling roots. And in bonsai, even design-wise, they're not aesthetically pleasing. You want a nice flowing root structure that comes out from the trunk. This root here is circling, so I'm just going to take that off. This root here is growing straight up. That's not something I'd like in the final design. This root is circling also. See how it wants to like spring back? I'm going to cut this here. I also want it nice and flat on the bottom, and as you can see, this is growing down quite a bit, so I'm just going to come and prune here. All these roots here are pretty long and they're circling. So as you can see, this root ball has been reduced quite a bit. I'm going to reduce it even more as I just feel there's still some problems. This one is growing straight up. Get rid of that. I've kept only the roots that is going to encourage this nice flowing movement into the soil. This root system is a little bit one-sided, as you can see over here, but I'm more than confident that when I pot this today, within the next year, this will fill out really quickly. And I'm actually going to plant this now into the same pot that we took it out of. When you replant a bonsai, you always want some space for the tree to grow into. And as you can see, when I sit this in here, there's plenty of space around the edges for the roots to grow. So to prepare the pot, I'm just going to take some mesh tape. This is used in like the plastering industry, but it also works great for bonsai. If you just cut a little square of the mesh, put it along the bottom like that, it sticks down and no soil is going to fall out the bottom. I'm going to take some wire, measure it along the pot, just like this. Take some wire cutters, cut it here. And because I want to anchor this, last time this came up through the bottom, which wasn't good. So I want to anchor this with a thicker piece of wire right here. So here's some 4mm bonsai wire. I'm just cutting a little amount. I'm going to lay it along the bottom like this, hold it in place, and then feed the wire through here. That way when it's pulled, this thicker piece of wire prevents it from being pulled up through the bottom. I'm just going to push this out like this. That way it's not going to slip off. Just like that. Now just taking some bonsai soil. This is a mix of pumice, akadama, and lava rock. Really aerated soil that will be really good for this tree to develop in. I'm going to place this in the pot like this. Here you can consider the planting angle. Do you want it more this way, this way? In this case, I'm training this tree to be a broom style, so I want it absolutely straight in the pot. I'm going to take more of the soil. And then I'm just going to work this in with the chopstick. And it's important to work soil in like this when you repot a tree, as it works out any air gaps that's in the soil. Because if you have air gaps in the soil of your bonsai, whenever you water the tree, anywhere there is air gaps is essentially areas in which water cannot reach. You really want to just work out all the air gaps. Once the tree is then mostly secure, I like to take the wire, loop it over the top, keep the tension, that way the wire doesn't fall out of the bottom, and then twist it, pulling up. All right. Then with the gene pliers, just twist it to secure it firmly in place. And just as I finish this tree, it has just started raining and thunder is happening over in the distance. It came out of nowhere. So I'm gonna put the camera away and come back tomorrow where we do these next two trees. All right. We are back another day. All my trees survived the storm. I watered this tree in just after I repotted it, and it seems to be settling into this pot nicely. Now I'm gonna move on to this big one. Okay, so I'm just checking to see. It's a little tricky to get this tree out of the pot, so I'm first going to check, is there any wire in this? No, there is not. On the back end of these bonsai tweezers, there's a little spatula, and I like to use this for just getting down the sides of bonsai pots like this. And this just helps loosen the tree out of the pot. That should be enough if we just one side. Look at that. Oh my goodness. So these roots, as you can see, are completely matted the whole way around. This is, without a doubt, getting pot bound, and this really needs to be dealt with this year. If I were to leave this for another year, this would just simply get worse and worse, and it's really not good. So I'm going to give this tree the same treatment as we did the other one. I'm going to start by just loosening up the soil on the surface here. I'm actually going to take the bent fork here. If it's so pot bound, you are going to need to tear through some roots just to get it loosened up. And in this case, as you can see, I'm tearing through a little here. This is just a little that's breaking off, some here. This is completely fine. This is a normal thing that happens whenever you go at the roots like this. But as long as it just really helps in loosening up the soil and you don't lose too much roots, that's what matters. If you're working in something like a juniper or a tree that has a nice, really good refined Nebari, I absolutely would not come in with a bent fork or really any metal tool for that matter. I would be a lot more gentle on the roots like this with the chopstick. But because this tree is in development and all I want to do is just loosen this up, and I know this tree is a super vigorous species, I know it will handle this kind of work no problem. Now I'm going to work on the bottom of the roots, again just working outward from the trunk. Okay, so I think I've got these loosened up as much as I possibly can right now. 1/10 of the roots that have been removed in this process. Now let's give these a wash. So I have washed the roots as much as I can, and now it's time for some real root work. As you can see under here, I've removed as much soil as I possibly can. It's got a nice root spread underneath. And what I'm going to start by doing is just simply remove any of these roots, like this one here, that I know is curling and is absolutely too long. So I'm just going to shorten that to here. This one is winding around this way. This one is pretty thick and it's coming from the underside here. And when I prune roots, what I'm doing is just aiming to prune any crossing roots, any roots going in weird directions, any roots, for example, on the top here that's growing straight up, or any here that's growing straight down. And the goal is just, again, to promote this lateral growing roots to come down and flow into the soil. I am going to keep these thicker roots here because these are developing what is known as a good Nebari. And Nebari is just a Japanese word that we give to the surface roots of the tree. And if I were to come in and, prune all of these, I would then move the Nebari lower down, and I'd have to start again somewhere further down here. So any that's growing straight down here, I'm just going to remove like this. So as you can see, this is now getting nice and flat on the bottom. This is exactly what we're aiming for when we prune the roots like this. And finally, what I would like to do is just make sure that the root spread is evenly distributed in energy the whole way around. So as you can see, what I'm going to do is, say this is the edge of the Nebari where I currently have it. There's actually some growing straight up here. I'm going to remove them. I'm going to spin the roots around and just cut so that they're all the same distance from the trunk. Just like this. This root is growing really strangely, so I'm going to get rid of that. And I think this is really good work for today. We've got a nice even and flat lateral growing root ball that I think when this then grows and thickens, this will make a really nice Nebari. I could absolutely take this tree, plant it back into the same training pot with a little space around the edges. But for me, that's not good enough. I just feel like I could do this, the tree would fill the pot, it would survive. And when it does grow and it fills this pot, I feel like we would be exactly sort of back at how this state is right now, because there really isn't much room around this pot for the roots to grow into. And as little as just 1 year, this tree would fill this pot exactly how you just seen before I started working on this. Another option is to take this tree, put it into a wider bonsai pot, plant it up like this. Look at that, isn't that nice? And you could train it from there. However, we mustn't lose sight of the future. I believe the absolute best approach is to put this in a pot that is absolutely oversized, like this huge pond basket, and plant it into here for like 2 to 3 years until this tree completely fills the pond basket, and then all these surface roots and Nebari will thicken up a lot once it's completely filled this pond basket. Then we can come back, reduce the root ball again, but by the time it's reduced, all these surface roots will be really nice and chunky and powerful looking. And then, and only then, if it is making good progress, we may even stick it back into a pond basket in like 2 to 3 years. No bonsai is really ever finished, but whenever you want to slow down its growth and then just take it into like slow refinement, then we can take it and put it into a nice ceramic bonsai pot. There is this need for this instant gratification sometimes of like, oh, it's a bonsai. Look at that, great. But there's also a need for long-term development where the destination to me isn't really the point. The point is just going along the way. Before potting this tree up straight into the soil, what I would like to do is put a stone under the root ball. That way, whenever the roots grow, the tree isn't going to waste energy putting it into roots that's going to grow straight downward that we're going to cut off anyways. The stone will prevent roots from growing here, and then the tree will put all of its energy into these nice lateral roots that we want. I couldn't find a stone, but I do have this, which is a piece of snowflake obsidian. It's like a little gemstone. If you are going to use gemstones like I am, I would just recommend that you research to make sure that they're actually safe in soil. This is just volcanic glass and it's inert and it's not going to disrupt the soil's chemistry. So I'm just going to put this in here, twist it down, and then we can go with more soil. And to keep this tree in place, what I'm going to do is simply take a chopstick, this one here, push it through the pond basket holes, right across like this, just for now. This will hold the tree in place. I'm gonna take this metal chopstick, this is just the other one I could find. I'm gonna put that through this other one. Look at this. You could also take some rocks, sit it on top and weigh it down. You could wire it into the pond basket. There's many ways to get this job done. I just find with these chopsticks like this, it's really quick and it works really well. Once the roots begin to fill the pond basket, I'll then take the chopsticks out, but for now, it's gonna stay until the tree's established. And then on top, just to keep the humidity levels of the soil up, I'm taking some of this sphagnum moss. This is a special kind of moss that's really aerated. It holds water really well. It's also antifungal and antibacterial. I'm just going to keep this on the top of the soil here. That way on hot days, it keeps the humidity levels up in the soil. And then just as these roots begin to grow, I'm then going to come in and take the moss off immediately, because if I let these roots grow, they are going to want to grow up into the moss, which we don't want. Again, we want that nice lateral growing roots. And finally, this little Mame sized bonsai. And this is probably the most common of bonsai that you will find pot bound, because if you have a vigorous growing species like this Lonicera and it's in a really small pot, I think this has actually been in this pot for 2 years, it's gonna absolutely fill it so quickly because there's so little space in here. So let's see what's going on in here. I'm gonna try and get it out. It's just absolutely stuck in there, as you can see. All right, oh my goodness. So look at this. I'm going the whole way around the pot with a spatula because I really want to just loosen this up. Okay. Oh my goodness. So many roots, look at that. Absolutely pot bound. This absolutely needs to be dealt with, and it's matted the whole way around. As you can see, I can actually just peel this off like a mat, which is really funny. Honestly, wasn't as bad as I was expecting, but it is too much roots for this little pot. Look at that. All these roots are just way too much. Whenever the roots grow, they end up hitting the side of the pot. And at this stage, they then have nowhere else to go. So they just circle around and around and around. And then you get this matting along the side like this. Sometimes you can actually take a piece and just completely unravel it many times. As I untangle this, it's just as I work on this here, I like to actually work at the water and just loosen the soil up like this. Keep dipping it
to get rid of all of the old soil that was there. I find it just helps to just keep washing it off like this. And I actually get this technique from when I used to have dreadlocks in my hair. The best way to untangle a dreadlock whenever I had to brush them out was to keep wetting it, and that helped it just loosen up better without tearing the hair. I think I had 192 dreadlocks. I had them in my hair for 1 year, 8 months, and 22 days. And I think it took about a month, roughly 1 hour per dreadlock to untangle them all, which was quite the ordeal. Now this is nice and washed. I'm just going to give this the exact same treatment as I gave the other trees. So all these roots I feel are just a little bit long. These ones here are growing straight downward. This here is a great big crossing root. I'm going to remove this. This root here is also a crossing root, so I'm going to remove that. I'm going to cut it where it emerges. Get rid of this. I'm pretty happy with this. And when it comes to repotting this one, I just feel this pot's a little too small. Maybe I could come back and finally put it into this, but I just feel I want to give this root ball a little bit more space to grow into. So I'm actually going to put it into the pot the other tree came out of. This is just perfect size. So I'm just taking little strips of 1.5mm aluminium bonsai wire, making sure it's the correct size. And these little pots are really great because they have all these wire holes underneath. So I'm just going to feed this wire up through the bottom of the pot, one coming across this way like this, and another coming across this way. I actually just find this piece of slate, which is great. Then just taking the wire, I'm going to bring it across the tree on the top, and this will just help hold it in place just by twisting it off here. I'm not going to cut this wire because I want to take it off pretty soon. This tree isn't going into a show or anything. It doesn't need to be cut. I'm going to take some gin pliers and use these just to help tighten it into place. Pretty happy with that. Now, after working on the roots of the 3 of these trees, I'm now asking myself, do I want to come in and work on the foliage by pruning it back? Depending on the species, you may want to or may not want to do this. These are like super vigorous trees. I know I can absolutely get away with working on the roots and the top of these trees and they'll bounce back no problem. But if you happen to be working on something like a juniper or a pine, it's best when working with these type of species to only work on one of the roots or the foliage every other year, or sometimes every other 2 years. So if you are going to do this and deal with pot-bound trees, it's definitely important to research, can the species of tree you're working on handle both? As these trees now begin to establish in the soil, after about 3 weeks, I'm going to begin fertilizing them with a balanced fertilizer, something with an NPK value of 10, 10, 10, or even a 5, 5, 5. Perhaps maybe on these smaller ones, I might give high nitrogen because I want longer shoots so I can prune back and get a quicker development. Where this one, I feel like it's coming into the refinement stages. It's got pads and things like that. So I want the internodes of the leaves to be a little shorter. Now I'm going to give these a quick little maintenance prune and a water. And that's all I'm going to do for today. And there you have it. On that, I'm going to end off this video right here. If you enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like on this video. It really helps out the channel a lot with the YouTube algorithm. And let me know down in the comments what you thought of this video, or if you yourself have had to deal with any pot-bound bonsai, and even if you have any tips and tricks for me on how you deal with them. I'd love to hear it. I'm always open to new and different ideas in bonsai. If you'd like to support me in the things that I do on this channel, hit the thanks button down below, or if you'd like to become a channel member, hit the join button. That way you'll get early access to new videos before they go out to everyone else, and you get access to membership posts. But on that, thank you so very much for watching.